Hey there, are you ready to get your thriller fix?
Oh, yeah.
Today we're doing a deep dive into the world of Freida McFadden.
Okay.
We've got an interview with the best-selling author herself. And let me tell you, it is jam-packed with insights into her writing process, what makes her tick, and even a few surprising tidbits about the publishing world.
I love it when that happens.
Right,
Yeah.
so McFadden is known for her intricate plots and all those twists and turns, and she actually maps those out in advance.
Whoa.
I know. She uses her husband as a sounding board, even though he's not a reader himself. Can you imagine?
That's amazing.
Talk about a captive audience, right?
Yeah, that is wild. That's so funny. But you know what it really speaks to is the universality of a well-crafted plot. Like if someone who doesn't typically gravitate towards thrillers can get caught up in the suspense, the author is onto something special. But beyond that, like McFadden's success in the genre, I think it can also be attributed to her talent for crafting these characters that feel incredibly real, even when the plot takes them into outlandish territory.
That's so true. She has this way of weaving in these relatable details from her own life.
Yeah.
And it's like, who hasn't struggled to get their kid out of bed in the morning? Although maybe I wouldn't go as far as the whole cat trap strategy.
Yeah, that's a little intense.
Yeah.
But she finds that sweet spot between relatability and pushing the boundaries of believability. It's a technique that a lot of thriller writers they employ. But McFadden does it exceptionally well.
Yeah.
She grounds her characters in these everyday experiences.
Right.
Creates that sense of familiarity before she flips the script and throws them and the reader for a loop.
And speaking of flipping the script,
Okay.
she talked about how her upcoming release, The Crash, was actually written years ago.
Wow.
But she shelved it because she just felt like it wasn't ready. And after revisiting it with a fresh perspective, she gave it a major rewrite.
That's a common experience for writers.
Yeah.
Especially in genre fiction where the market can be quite competitive. Authors often have to balance their creative vision with what they believe will resonate with readers and publishers.
Right.
And sometimes that means putting a project aside and letting it simmer for a while before returning with fresh eyes and a new understanding of the craft.
It makes you wonder how many potentially great books are out there just waiting to be rediscovered.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Maybe this is a sign that we should all revisit those passion projects that we've tucked away in a drawer somewhere.
Absolutely. It's definitely a good reminder that creative growth isn't always linear. It often takes time, experimentation, and the willingness to revisit our work with a critical eye to truly unlock its potential.
Absolutely. And speaking of growth, McFadden was very open about her experience with social anxiety. Oh. And she thrives in the online world where she can connect with readers kind of on her own terms.
Yeah.
But she admitted that live events are a different story.
This is particularly interesting given the evolving landscape for authors these days.
Yeah.
Social media has become such an important tool for connecting with readers and promoting their work.
Right.
But it also presents a unique set of challenges, especially for those who may not be comfortable with that constant public exposure.
So true. It makes you wonder how the role of the author might continue to evolve in the digital age.
Right.
Will we see a shift towards more virtual book tours and online engagement?
It's certainly a possibility. I mean, we're already seeing a trend of authors building strong online communities through platforms like Instagram and TikTok.
That's true.
It's a way for them to connect with readers in a more personal way.
Mm.
And it offers a level of control and accessibility that traditional media often lack.
That's a really good point. It gives authors more agency in shaping their public image and connecting with their audience.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how McFadden and other authors like her continue to navigate this evolving terrain.
Speaking of navigating the literary world, McFadden's journey from self-published author to international bestseller.
Right.
It offers a fascinating glimpse into the changing dynamics of the publishing industry.
Yeah.
And she actually talked about how she started out just writing for fun, squeezing it in between her job as a physician and raising her kids.
Wow.
And it wasn't until she made a conscious decision to focus more on writing that things really took off.
It's a testament to her dedication and work ethic, but it also highlights the opportunities that self-publishing has created for authors. I mean, it really levels the playing field. It allows authors to bypass the traditional gatekeepers and build a readership kind of on their own terms.
Yeah.
Of course, that's not to say self-publishing is easy,
Right.
but it offers a level of control and creative freedom that wasn't as readily available before.
Absolutely. And for McFadden, it seems like that freedom allowed her to experiment and hone her craft and find her voice, which ultimately paved the way for her mainstream success.
Precisely. And speaking of finding her voice, I was particularly struck by McFadden's emphasis on crafting strong female characters who, like, defy easy categorization.
Yes.
It's a common thread in her work.
Yeah, and she attributes that to her own experiences and the women she's like surrounded by in her life.
Right.
She even shared that story about starting a secret writing group with some friends from a workshop.
Oh, wow.
I know, and they called it the Power Woman Workshop, if I remember correctly.
I love that. It speaks to the power of community and mentorship, especially in a field that can be quite solitary. But beyond that, McFadden's focus on, like, female relationships and their complexities, it taps into a larger trend in the thriller genre.
Yeah.
A move away from stereotypical portrayals of women towards characters who are multidimensional,
Right.
flawed, and ultimately relatable.
Right. They're not just victims or love interests. They're driving the plot, making questionable decisions, and like supporting each other through thick and thin.
Exactly. And those nuanced portrayals are undoubtedly a big part of why readers, particularly women, are drawn to McFadden's books.
Yeah.
They see themselves reflected in these characters' flaws and...
Speaking of flaws, McFadden does not shy away from giving her characters some rough edges.
Right.
She even joked that the more unlikable a character is, the more likely it's based on her.
I appreciate that self-awareness.
Right.
It speaks to her willingness to be vulnerable and embrace the complexities of human nature.
Yeah.
It's also a refreshing change of pace from authors who strive for, like, perfect, likable characters.
It definitely makes you want to grab a coffee with her and hear all the stories behind those characters.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about setting McFadden's vivid descriptions of New York City create a palpable sense of place in her books.
It's interesting you should mention that because someone in the interview actually asked her about her fascination with New York.
Okay.
And it turns out she grew up in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
So it holds a special significance for her.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense that she'd set so many of her stories in a place that feels familiar and endlessly fascinating to her.
Right.
And her deep connection to the city is evident in the way she captures its energy, its grittiness, and the unique challenges and triumphs of navigating life in such a vibrant, densely populated environment.
And she doesn't shy away from exploring the darker side of the city, either like the undercurrents of fear and uncertainty that lurk beneath the surface.
Right.
It adds another layer of tension to her stories.
It's that juxtaposition of the familiar and the unsettling that makes her stories so compelling. Readers can relate to the everyday anxieties of city living, but she takes those anxieties and, like, ratchets up the stakes, creating a world where even the most mundane encounters can take a sinister turn.
And that brings us back to her mastery of suspense.
Okay.
We've talked about her plots, her characters, but what about the actual content of her stories? Are there any topics she avoids?
Interestingly, she mentioned that anything involving harm to children is off limits for her.
That doesn't surprise me given her background as a physician.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a parent herself, it makes sense that she'd have a hard line there.
Right.
And it speaks to a certain sensitivity, I think.
Yeah.
An understanding of the power dynamics at play in those kinds of scenarios that perhaps wouldn't resonate as authentically if she chose to delve into them.
It's a good reminder that even authors who write about like these dark and disturbing themes,
Right.
they have their boundaries, their own moral compass that kind of guides their work.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between pushing creative boundaries and respecting the reader's sensibilities.
Right.
And it's about staying true to your own values as a writer.
Speaking of staying true to oneself, McFadden also talked about her love of audiobooks, both as a listener and as a narrator.
Oh, cool.
And it turns out she's a big fan of memoirs that are narrated by the authors themselves.
I can see why that would appeal to her.
Yeah.
There is an immediacy and intimacy to hearing an author's own words brought to life in their own voice.
Right.
It adds another layer of authenticity to the storytelling.
And she's not just a casual listener either.
Okay.
She is quite discerning when it comes to audiobook narrators for her own books.
It makes sense that she'd be so meticulous, given her attention to detail and her ear for dialogue. She understands that the right narrator can, like, make or break an audiobook.
Oh, for sure.
And she's not willing to compromise on that aspect of the reader's experience.
It's that dedication to her craft, that deep understanding of what resonates with readers that has made her such a force in the thriller genre.
Absolutely. And based on everything we've, like, uncovered in this deep dive,
Right.
It seems like she's just getting started.
I'm excited to see what she comes up with next.
Me too.
So, to wrap things up, if you were looking for a thriller writer who delivers on plot twists, relatable characters, and like a healthy dose of social commentary, Freida McFadden should be at the top of your list.
And if you're interested in like the evolving landscape of publishing, the power of self-publishing, and the role of social media in an author's career,
Right.
McFadden's journey offers a fascinating case study.
It's a reminder that the world of books is constantly changing, and authors like McFadden are at the forefront of that evolution.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy reading.